I don't want to have the Dunning-Kruger effect, think that I am smarter than I actually am. I always have something to learn. I always have opportunity to improve. I always will have something that I could do better. Hey, it's Lance McGowan here, and today I'm going to talk about the top 7 mistakes that anti-MLM people make when it comes to multi-level marketing companies or network marketing in general. So if you're an anti-MLM person, this video is for you or someone you know. And if you are pro-MLM or pro-network marketing, then this video, hopefully you can relate to at least one thing that I say today. All right, so I'm gonna start with 7 and then go to the number 1 thing that basically anti-MLM people make a mistake on. And the 7th thing is that they lack objectivity. And so that means not just looking at the pros of the anti-MLM position or agenda or narrative, and not just the cons of an MLM position, but looking at the pros and the cons of the anti-MLM position and the pros and the cons of the MLM position. And this is very important so that people come to an accurate conclusion. So often I see it's very lopsided. It's like, let me just provide all of the pros of, what I do, whether it's, working for a company or having a small business, or it's a franchise or any other business model that's not anti-MLM. Let's provide all the pros to those. And let's provide as many cons as we can for the MLM side. And it's just like, that is not being objective, and that does not lead to accurate conclusions. And so that is definitely a big mistake when it comes to trying to look at things more objectively. All right, so let's talk about number 6 mistake that is made. And it's that anti-MLM people overgeneralize a lot. And you could be like, well, aren't you overgeneralizing that they're overgeneralizing? To a certain degree, but the reality is that it's a lot of people that are anti-MLM and also in general in life overgeneralize, and that basically means they use a focus group of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or however many it is, and it may not even be a representative sample, and then they extrapolate that to the whole industry or whole company based on their experience with one person or multiple people. And the key to remember is if that's not a representative sample, then number 1, they're drawing, again, inaccurate conclusions, but they're just overgeneralizing, and it's just not a good idea. We have to look at things instead by a case-by-case basis from the person, the team, the products, and the company, and that requires a lot of work. And a lot of people, a lot of times, they just don't want to, because it's so much easier to put something in a box, close the lid, and shove it in a corner than it is to actually open the box, look at something from all angles, and then, come to a conclusion slowly over time. Speaking of conclusions, let's talk about the number 5 mistake that anti-MLM people make, and it's that they jump to conclusions very quickly, and then they hold on to them tightly. And it's, there's a lot of different conclusions that are come to. The top 4 conclusions that I hear the most are that MLMs are a pyramid scheme, that MLMs are a scam, and that they're overpriced products, and that basically there's exaggerated health claims made by distributors. Are there situations where individuals, maybe even teams, condone themselves in a way where they make over-exaggerated health claims or whatever claims of their product's benefits? Sure, I'm not doubting that, right? That's me trying to look at both sides, right? But at the same time, we have to also remember that, hey, if it is an overpriced product, people vote with their dollar, and value is very subjective, and it's based upon, the price of the product and the product's quality and the value that you receive maybe from the service standpoint too. So there's so many elements. And are there opportunities for improvement for distributors or people in network marketing that do as a part-time or full-time business to not make over-exaggerated claims? Specifically with my company, I would say with the health side, sure, there's opportunities. Making sure we use compliant, claims with regards to the FDA and things like that is very, very important. But to, again, put something in a box and then close the lid and then jump to that conclusion quickly, hold on to it tightly, when instead we should come to conclusions slowly over time. We should hold on to them loosely, and then what we should do is allow an opportunity to suspend our disbeliefs for just a moment so that better or more information can come in, instead of just saying, let's get them, right? Let's nail them. I had a bad experience, let's nail it, and then overgeneralize and say all network marketing companies are scams or all of them are pyramid schemes. when according to the FTC definition, which I'll have below, it's as long as real products are exchanged for real money and that value exchange occurs, then it's not a pyramid scheme. And so there has to be real products that are being exchanged for real money. And we have to look at, again, the customer to distributor distribution ratio as well within a network marketing company, as well as their product quality and a lot of other factors so that we can justify or better understand how things are priced compared to other retail-based products or something that people may buy online. The number 4 mistake that is made by anti-MLM people is that they are being unreasonable. And unreasonable means when somebody is focusing on being right, they're trying to win, and they are basically trying to blame or shame based on the problem. Instead of being reasonable, which means we are focused on the truth, seeking understanding, and solving problems. And a lot of times what happens is unreasonable people don't see themselves as unreasonable, and unreasonable could be used as a synonym for haters or people that, just don't like you or don't agree with you, but don't know how to communicate that in a respectful way. And again, what I found in my comment sections is that people don't typically know or identify with that term unreasonable or haters because they don't have the self-awareness or the honesty to admit what aspects of what they're saying or doing is unreasonable. And that's mostly because they haven't received the education around what that is, which is why I recommend so often the book How to Solve Your People Problems by Alan Godwin, which will be in the description below as well, because it's so important that we educate ourselves on how we understand ourselves so we can better interact with others and have intelligent discussions and not just discussions that are around winning and being right, like this is a tennis match. This is not a tennis match. This is not a Super Bowl game. There isn't rules that apply, like people are using different standardized rules for a discussion and when it comes to a lot of these topics, meaning they're like using baseball rules to play a football game, and when you say, hey, we're playing football, they're like, no, it's baseball. There's home runs, and you're like, no, this is football, though. There's touchdowns as a way to, and they're just like, but at the end of the day, it's not even a game of winning and losing with sports. It's like, it's almost like you're knitting or something. It's like, there's no like teams and winning and losing. We're like knitting. We're just trying to create something awesome, and you're just like trying to apply baseball rules to what should be a football game, but it's not even a football game, it's knitting, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Unreasonable people basically try to win and be right and use their own standard on a different standard that doesn't make sense, basically. The number 3 mistake that is made is that anti-MLM people tend to project a lot. And projection is kind of like when you're at the AMC movie theater, or you're at any movie theater for that matter, and you see a projection coming from a machine and that's being put onto the screen. And so all the images and sound are coming from that machine, but the screen gets the like, oh, this is what's happening on the screen, right? So the screen gets the identification that it's where the images and stuff are coming from, but really it's the projector. The projector is the issue. And so often I see a lot of people project what they're saying onto other people instead of looking within themselves and saying, hey, what do I need to own? What do I need to take responsibility for? Those questions are never asked. It's always the other person, the team, the product, or the company's fault, and the zero responsibility taken for their thoughts, words, and actions is a huge red flag, and I see that as a big mistake that happens a lot too. Speaking of all that, the number 2 mistake that I see is that there isn't personal responsibility taken for their actions on top of a lack of discernment. And so that's kind of like a dual thing, but like it's so easy to point the finger at someone else, right? But when you look at that, you have 3 pointing right back at you. And even if you do this to somebody and say it's your fault, or I blame and shame you for all my problems, or not being successful in a network marketing business, or whatever it is in life, my parents failed me, that's why I'm this or that, your whole hand is connected to your arm, and your arm is connected to your body, and the only common denominator in all of that is yourself. And so I have heard some people say, well, you're just blaming and shaming me, Lance, for not putting enough effort or whatever it is. And it's like, absolutely not. But what I also don't hear on your end is zero responsibility taken for your own thoughts, words, or actions, as I mentioned in the previous mistake that is made a lot of times. And it's like, hold on, right? like let's take personal responsibility, is specifically for having discernment. And discernment is basically being able to recognize the truth from a lie. And you only do that by properly educating yourself, doing research, and ideally focusing on objective truths. And objective truth is basically something that can be proven through research and replicated by other people. And so when we look at that, discernment is very key because we have to look at the compensation plan, we have to look at the income disclosure statement, and we have to look at the person, the product, and the company very thoroughly, as well as shop around with other people and companies and products and understand our needs and goals very well in order to choose a network marketing company to be a customer, which most companies should have a customer base that's larger than their distribution base, which means, or distributor base, which means they're offering a lot of value, which is what the company I'm with is. Like, there's a lot more customers than there are distributors. So that means they're getting value from the products at a discount. And so when you look at all of those, you're like, man, that's a lot of factors to consider. It's like, that's why discernment, that's why education, and that's why trying to focus on the other things I mentioned, like being objective and looking at other factors within ourselves, that introspection, that self-reflection is so important. And it's so often not done because of this reason right here. So easy to point the finger. It's so hard to see that there's three pointing back at us, or that our hand is connected to our arm is connected to ourselves, especially if we've been hurt, we've been let down, we've been disappointed by the words or actions of somebody over-promising us something and under-delivering, right? It's the mansion and Ferrari people, or it's this product will be a miracle in your life people. And that's why I focus on just being realistic, which is a blend between optimistic and pessimistic. There's realistic, and it's just being real with people, and that's the key. Like, hey, what are your needs? What are your goals? Let's see if it's a good fit. If it's not me, then let's see what other options are for you that could help, and let's explore that until you find something that works for you. And what is the number one mistake that is made by anti-MLM people? And this is what I see a lot in the Reddit posts of the anti-MLM, whole subreddit and everything, as well as my YouTube channel, and it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And you may be like, Dunning-Kruger effect? What is that? Well, it basically states that we think that we are smarter than we actually are. And you may be like, oh, you trying to be condescending now, Lance? It also works to an aspect where we are at a certain level and we think others are at that level as well, and it doesn't quite work out that way. So an example would be, I think I'm the best driver in the world, or I think I'm better than most people when it comes to driving, yet if I have a lot of speeding tickets, or if I have a lot of accidents, or just some accidents or some speeding tickets, that would not make me the best in the world. That would not make me the best in my city or state, especially if a lot of other people have had little to no speeding tickets or little to no accidents that they were at the fault for. And so you also have to look at who's at fault for all that stuff too, specifically like, fender benders and stuff. That's getting a little more detail with the analogy. But the point of the Dunning-Kruger effect is a lot of times people are like, look, this is a pyramid scheme. This is an MLM scam. They're overpriced products, and there's exaggerated claims made by distributors. And that's always the case all the time, no matter what. And it's just like, well, if there's an exception to any of that, then you're automatically proven incorrect. Or you're automatically, not being fully accurate. And they're like, no, this is not the case. And it's just like, you keep trying to win and have somebody agree with you to affirm your rightness, when in reality, you're not being accurate or correct and aren't right when you're looking at a standard like what the FTC has as a definition. I've even had somebody say the FTC definition of products for money as a value exchange with network marketing companies is an outdated definition, that it doesn't apply, and it's a product-based pyramid scheme. And it's like, well, just because you don't like the definition or you feel that it's old because it came out a while ago doesn't mean the truths and what the FTC or Federal Trade Commission holds companies by is any less true or any less accurate, okay? Just because I don't like trucks doesn't mean that if I walk out on the freeway, I won't get hit by one. Just because I don't, agree with trucks. The reality is that trucks are driving on the freeway, and I need to not walk on the freeway, or I need to be careful and look both ways if I am crossing a street to make sure I don't get hit by it. So just because I don't like something, and there's also really good trucks, right? There's good people who will stop, and because it's at a crosswalk and there's a green light and there's a walk sign or whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is that just because you don't like or agree with something doesn't mean it's not true. And just because you think you know more, or you think you're this or that with your knowledge base, doesn't mean it's fully accurate. And all of the things that I've mentioned today, the top 7 mistakes that I've mentioned, I've either been guilty of myself in the past, or there's aspects of what I do that I could be guilty of, but the difference between what I do and what others do is that I actually try to acknowledge the obvious, right? A lot of people may not be talking about this because it's uncomfortable, or they don't like it, or they don't agree with it, and it's not sexy, right? This is not a sexy topic, but it's very relevant because it happens so often, right? If it's not in my YouTube comment section, which you may be like, Lance, I don't really see that happening that often, or you may be like, yeah, I've seen it sometimes, and I see where you're coming from. It happens so much in the anti-MLM Reddit feed or subreddit that it's really astounding how much is going on, and so important for me to try to address those things. And so the point I'm trying to make at the end of the day, because this is the main learning lesson, is it's so important to have self-awareness. It's so important to have empathy and try to understand the other person's perspective. And it's so important to acknowledge the obvious and try to be more objective by looking at the pros and cons, not just of your argument, but also the pros and cons of the opposing belief. And when you get to the point where you understand the other side's position better than they understand it, you're in a good spot, right? And then you have to avoid the Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you're smarter than you actually are. And then you also have to be realistic with regards to what smart is. And smart isn't just like, hey, I need to fill my head up with a bunch of knowledge and feel like I need my ego stroked by how much more I know than other people. It's really, we really should focus on how do I understand and seek education so that I can understand all 7 mistakes and not make them myself, and have a lot of practical real world knowledge at looking at both sides of the coin, and not just trying to, have a group think or echo chamber with people that's just like, yeah, anti-MLM, let's all march towards that, or hey, we're all pro-MLM and we could do no wrong. And it's just like, no, there's bad apples in any bunch. There's bad actors in any industry, company, or team, and it's important to not be those, number one, regardless of the industry, corporate, franchise, small business, but also, what mistakes we can avoid to make sure we're just implementing best practices within an industry or company, which means we're teaching, like in the network marketing field and what my team focuses on and what I focus on, lead with powerful products, focus on teaching and sharing, and be transparent with all of that, and let people know that, hey, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future it will be. And that's the best practice. And the mistakes to avoid, they're the same ones or very similar to the ones I mentioned with anti-MLM people. And so it's so easy to do that in any aspect of our life, whether it's business, health, or relationships. I mean, in relationships it could happen. We could just focus on the cons or the negatives of our spouse or somebody we love or a family member and never look at the positives. And so we would hold them in contempt or get bitter or resentful towards them. And that's a hard ditch to get out of. Or when you look at your health, you could project and say, look, I'm not in a good spot myself health-wise, and so you're not in a good spot, and nobody else is either, and so we could overgeneralize and project as well. So any of these could happen in any other aspect of our life, and I'm only presenting this in the anti-MLM person context because I see it a lot, again, in the anti-MLM Reddit, but also my YouTube comment section, and a lot of comments get held for review or blocked or deleted because people use profanity or derogatory terms or things like that, and I'm at the point where, I'm used to it, and so I can handle that, and I look at all those as a way to, personal development. It's like a personal development exercise, like not to get triggered myself, but sometimes I try to have fun with it and be a little witty with people. But otherwise, I do address what they're saying, and whether they like or agree with it, they did get a reasonable response from me. And that is my goal versus ignoring somebody or making them feel bad for their belief. No, I'm not. And I'm not trying to win or be right either. And I do recommend books because I believe self-education and getting that knowledge is super important. And whether they want to do that or not is up to them. And some, people get triggered on a lot of things, especially when I give them a reasonable response, which you can't reason with the unreasonable, and so that's kind of out the door. Or if I give a book recommendation, they get triggered on that. And then if I identify what they're going through from a psychological standpoint, they get triggered off of that. And so people are going to get triggered no matter what. And so I know in Proverbs, it talks a lot about not responding to a fool in the same way that they would respond back to you. And so I don't, use derogatory terms or profanity against them, but I do address them in a way, again, that is a reasonable response that gives them some constructive feedback, just like I get constructive feedback all the time and try to improve based on that. So Bottom line is, those are the top 7 mistakes to avoid as an anti-MLM person, and hopefully you can make those mistakes less, or at least be aware of them and own what is yours. And if you don't feel like you can own anything, I think that's a red flag as well. You're like, I don't ever make those mistakes, because we all make mistakes, or we all can fall into that in some area or aspect of our life if we're being really honest with ourselves, and that includes myself. And then the other aspect is, what best practices can we implement, which will probably be the opposite of those mistakes, which is if it's like, hey, if I'm projecting, how do I not project, right? Or if I am overgeneralizing, how do I look at things from a case-by-case basis? So if you just look at the opposite of each one of those mistakes, then you can have best practices that you can implement and actually come to more accurate conclusions, which at the end of the day should be the goal, because the more accurate conclusions we make, the better, decisions we can make. And, our beliefs drive our decisions, and our decisions drive our results. So if we want better results, we need to look at our decisions. And if we look at our decisions, what are we believing in here? And how much is true or partial truth, and how much is completely a lie or just false, regardless of if we agree or like with whatever's being said or not. Because a lot of times people will say it's wrong because it contradicts my belief system. It's not wrong because of contract. First, you have to look at what standard you're using for right and wrong, and then you have to look at what that standard deems as true, accurate, and basically false as well. And that requires a lot of work, and people just don't want to do work at the end of the day, right? They just want to come to the conclusion, and that's it, and boom, you can't tell me any different. But I always try to approach things with an open mind and look at a lot of different perspectives. And I know that network marketing isn't perfect, but it is a better way when you look at all of the pros and cons compared to corporate America, small business, and franchise. Is there a guarantee of anything? No, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme if the company has integrity and the founders are solid and the products are high quality. But at the same time, if you don't see results when you want to see them, and you didn't, actually put in work for 3 to 5 plus years, and you're like, 3 to 5 years? Well, most businesses don't break even until 3 to 5 years, and people are expecting to make whatever in 3 to 5 months. And it's like, for some people, yes, if they had a large base of customers or email list or followers or friends that really had a solid relationship with them, maybe, but otherwise, that's not gonna be the case. And you gotta put in that time and work. And it could take 3, 5, 7, 10 years. And somebody may be like, that's too long, Lance. Ain't nobody got time for that. I got bills to pay. Okay, well, that's why Eric Worre talks about you can be a lawyer, a doctor, whoever you wanna be, and still be somebody in network marketing if you believe in the person, product, and company from a business standpoint, and do that part-time. You don't have to quit your job and do network marketing right from the get-go. That's not even recommended. You should probably be at least earning $2,000 to $3,000 a month, or at least covering all your bills before you even think about going from part-time to full-time in a network marketing business. But so often they're like, if I can't go full-time right now or within my time frame of 3 to 5 months or whatever, 7 to 12 months, then it's either all or nothing. It's like if every business person said that, then there wouldn't be a lot of businesses, because everybody would give up too soon and too quick. And this is assuming you found the person, the product, and the company that you know and you like and you trust. If you buy, we buy emotionally and we justify rationally, but if we're not looking on the front end, the very front end, for that income disclosure statement, if we're not looking on the front end for that compensation plan from a business standpoint, and we're not looking on the front end for that person, product, and company that really makes sense, then the onus is on us. I didn't have the proper discernment. At the same time, if somebody's a sales associate or distributor, they need to make sure that they're matching the right solution for the right person. The only way to do that is to ask questions, not in an interview or interrogation style, but to just seek understanding so that we can find a fit and not try to stick a square peg through a circle hole with regards to a business opportunity or a product. And I think that's the key. There's opportunities on both ends, the prospect, the customer, and the distributor or business builder. And that's why I try to focus so much on sales training and communication training and conflict resolution training and marketing training. And there's so much education. And by the time you look at how much opportunities you have or that I have to improve, I don't have any time to really critique a lot of other people, because I'm like, man, I got so many things I need to be improving upon right now. I'm going through 4 or 5 books right now, because I'm like, man, I really need to step up my self-education game, self-awareness game, my empathy game, my communication, conflict. Even though I may feel that I have reached a spot where, I may be more self-aware or have more knowledge than other people in certain areas, I don't want to have the Dunning-Kruger effect, think that I am smarter than I actually am. I always have something to learn. I always have an opportunity to improve. I always will have something that I could do better. Always, no matter what, no matter how far I think I've arrived. I have never arrived. I don't want to be a perfectionist, but I do want to do things with excellence, and I don't want to be complacent. So there's a middle balance right here. I want to do things with excellence, and in order to do that, I need to constantly hone my skills and tweak along the way. And this video is more of a response, but also a snapshot in that, and hopefully it does encourage you if you are pro MLM or pro network marketing and focusing on teaching and sharing with powerful products and really just helping people with a solution that makes sense. And if you're anti-MLM, then either you're going to relate to some of this stuff or you're going to be, unreasonable and not relate to anything, and that's on you, right? I'm not here to try to convince anybody of switching sides or buying anything or anything like that. Nah, it's just let's look at things from a more reasonable, objective perspective, and hopefully that can translate to other areas of your life too. Well, that's it for today's video. Make sure to hit the like button if you did, hit subscribe for future video updates, and most importantly, check out the links in the description below. Lots of opportunities to get you to learn on, and I'll see you in the next video.